Hey, Cricket, who's that? Who's over there? No one, it's the phone, and you don't like the phone, huh? Death stares. Hey guys, I'm still feeling under the weather, so don't mind this face of mine. Hopefully crickets will make up for it, but I wanted to finally take you guys on a studio tour. I've been promising this for a long time and I keep putting it off, but today is finally the day that I want to go ahead and show you around, so go ahead and come on in with me. So a lot of you guys know that I don't have a separate studio space. I'm using the studio word here lightly. It's more like a workspace. This is half of my bedroom, so I am sitting on the bed right now and trying to get as wide of an angle as possible to show you guys the whole space. And the other part of my workspace is in my living room, which I will show you towards the end of this video. But first, let's go ahead and take a closer look at what we've got in here. So let's go ahead and start over here because we need some more light. This is my studio light, and I picked this up a little while back to help enhance the working hours of my life. Before, I only relied on sunlight, which is really difficult, especially in the winter, to record high quality videos. So I wanted to go ahead and get a studio light. This actually only ran me about $40 and is definitely one of the best, if not the best, purchases I've ever made in terms of my YouTube channel business growth. I highly recommend it to anyone else who might have a YouTube channel that they're starting off with. I know that they're bulky. I don't love how much floor space it takes up, but it's completely essential for how I work, and I'm really, really grateful to have it. I also have a little desk lamp here that's an LED light that can help with some extra light. I used to use just 2 of these and it worked okay, but they weren't quite bright enough. So it's hard to know where to start with all of this clutter stuff, art supplies, but let's go ahead and start with my most used. So right over here I've got my palettes, trying to adjust the lighting there for you. This is in a little hamper, and sometimes if you've been in chat rooms before, live streams like with Lindsay's stream and everything, Grace will tease me about my little hamper that I keep my watercolor palettes in, and this is what she's talking about. I think I got it at Daiso and it was like $2 or $3, and I keep all of my flat palettes in here that stack pretty well. So I've got 3 of these Manelle airtight palettes. 2 of them I set up a really long time ago, and the 3rd one I just recently set up for my Skillshare class, and it's an earthy, natural toned palette. So I'll go ahead and also link that Skillshare class if you're interested in learning how I set these up. I've got my beautiful Schminke palette here, then American Journey, my first Davinci palette, and in the back here, this big monster palette is my Daniel Smith half pans. I have a second hamper over here that's a little bit smaller, and this holds all of my smaller sets. So I've got 2 of the 24 half pan sets here. This one has Core, this one is Winsor Newton. I've got 2 portable painters. I'm just going to put a disclaimer in here if you haven't been on my channel for very long. I did a palette tour a little while ago, and I also put the disclaimer in this video. I have an excessive amount of paints, and no one needs as many paints as I have, and honestly, I've been totally overwhelmed by how much paint I've got, especially lately with the addition of some new larger sets. But please keep in mind when you're watching this video that I review paint for a living, and it's my job to tell you guys about these different brands of paint and give you my thoughts. So I have more paint than anyone really should, and definitely more than I would have in my own creative process if I didn't also review paint. So just put that out there. I've got a little Kramer palette here, then a lot of various ones. I think I have a Schminke Academy palette. These are Eve's handmade paints, Colors of Nature, and then an empty Schminke box that I know what I'm gonna fill, and it's right over here, and you'll see it in just a second. Next to my palettes, I meant to tidy this up before I started recording, but oh well, you get to see it as it is lived in. This is where I keep all my brushes, obviously. I've got a dwindling supply of microns here. There used to be quite a bit more, so they must have run off other places. And then I've got some Pitt pens that are very similar, a glass dip pen. So even though I have a ton of brushes, I really only use a couple of them regularly. On the right hand side there is my Silver Black Velvet size 8 that I love so much. Next to it I have a Velvet Touch I think it's a size 4 flat shader, and I use that for like my swatches and the Color Spotlight series and things like that. Then I have a Escoda Perla size 2 that I use for my detail work, and I don't use it very often because it's a really precious material for me, but the Rosemary & Co brush on that left-hand side was a gift, and it gets beautifully thin lines. I know it looks like it has several points right now, but when you're painting with it and the brush is fully wet, it's beautiful to work with. The rest of the brushes that I have were either purchased really early on when I thought I needed a bunch of brushes, or they were provided to me by companies, and I've put them here on the channel, or I haven't, depending on if I like them or not. The cup here next to it is, the mug I should say, was something that I painted at like, I don't know what they're called. There's like a more generic name. Our local one is called Petroglyphs, where you go and you paint like a mug and then they fire it for you and that kind of thing. And that's where I keep all my acrylic brushes or my extra watercolor brushes that are a little bit less expensive and less precious. I pull them out sometimes when I'm doing swatches. I've got 2 what are obviously dirty water dishes out right now, and then a box full of some miscellaneous supplies. It was mostly to hold pencils and have a place for those, but it's also grown to hold a couple other things. I've got some paint that I haven't yet categorized. I've got my Graham palette that lays flat because I'm too afraid to tip it on its side in case it gets runny. And then I also have this pouch from World Watercolor Month that is also filled with Schmincke gouache, which I purchased from my Jackson's affiliates link, and I'm really excited to finally get to a video whenever that may be, whenever I'm able to find time for that. I've got 2 little rags here that I keep on hand, and then I've got my studio palette. So formerly you would have only seen like this big hunkin' guy sitting out on the desk before. This is my American Journey palette, and it was gifted to me by a viewer, so I'm still so appreciative of that. And then recently I got this big guy. Let me pull back so you can just see the comparison there. And that's my new Davinci palette, and if I open this up, you'll see the footprint is actually, it's a little bit shorter but wider than that big ceramic palette. So those 2 big guys stay up on top of the desk so that I can access them more easily, and because they just don't fit over there. Over here we have something that is really precious to me that I keep near and dear to my heart. I've got a stack of crates here that I use as shelving, and atop them is a teddy bear that my grandmother used to have in her collection. She's no longer with us, but I like having her here working with me, and it also is accompanied by the tales of Winnie the Pooh, which was one of the books she read to us growing up. Underneath that is where I keep all of my tubes of paint. It looks like this little Da Vinci guy is trying to escape. But I had told myself for a while, like a really long time, that I was going to make sure that I didn't ever outgrow this, because really anything more than this is insanely excessive. But I recently did that trio for Da Vinci and got some extra paints as part of that deal. So yeah, it grew, and I have some spilling over onto the top, and I have shamefully hidden some tubes other places. But we've got, they're kind of organized by brand. I've got Daniel Smith here. Da Vinci are in these 2 now. We've got M. Graham tucked over here. These 2 are also Daniel Smith. We've got miscellaneous half pans and my Cotman tubes that I used to teach with, and then a couple of containers of paint plus my 2 bringers. It's funny, you guys all, a lot of people comment on my old videos of me trying to struggle getting paint out of tubes that were like 2 years old or something like that. And I'm like, don't worry, I have the paint tube bringers now. I've got some Mission Gold paints in this one. This one's kind of like my hodgepodge. It's Daniel Smith sticks, Sennelier, and then I've got this Jackson sample of Ultramarine. We already did that one. This is Winsor & Newton, and this is Schmincke. So those are all my tubes of paint that I can refill my palettes with. Underneath that, oh, I should just say what this thing sticking up in the middle is. Again, for those of you who might have your own channels, it is a microphone boom arm, but I use it to hold my video camera to record if I'm doing an overhead. Usually I reserve this these days for Patreon videos, full-length tutorials, and I'll show you what I use for most of the YouTube videos in a little bit. Underneath that big blue binder is my swatch book binder, and then I've got a assortment of other collections with my swatch cards and color charts and all of that stuff. The big black folio, I don't know if I can really focus on that, there we go. That has a bunch of old paintings in it from when I first started. And then under that is my art books, some extra journals. We've got another palette. This is about the same size as the Davinci one, but this is my Mission White class paints, the gouache hybrids, and then the box behind them are the tubes themselves. I've got my, let me see if I can point to it. I've got my sketchbook here, this is just regular paper, and then larger sizes of watercolor paper there on the floor. And then if I back up here, you can see I've got like a paper folio divider. I don't know, it hangs on the wall and it holds paper. And all those hold my watercolor blocks and pads of paper. The bottom one is for Bristol board and student grade papers. Then I've got the bulk of my papers that I use on a regular basis. It's at height with my desk, so when I'm sitting there I can reach it really easily. Mostly that is Arches, but also contains some Kilimanjaro and that Blick Premier hot press. Then above that, I've got some sample packs that I need to dive into one of these days so I can do a part 2 ultimate paper comparison testing situation. And then up here, I've got some smaller blocks, some handmade papers, anything that's loose, and then my Aqua Bee sheets. Now I'm gonna have to hunker down here over on the floor to show you the next little bits. Over here is a very messy and not well put together organizer that holds all of the things that I still need to review for the channel. So, oh, and my Kuritakis that have overflowed their container and just fallen out. That's nice. Anyway, I was saying, if you are ever wondering if I am in a shortage of ideas for videos, I can assure you I am not. It is just time that I have to wrestle with these days. I've got a paper cutter here as well to cut watercolor paper. This is for folding cards and envelopes. I've got a self-healing mat down here. I've got my light tables so that I can trace finished artwork. And I also have a gray card which helps me to calibrate the color in my videos. That's a photography tool that can help out there. That white box is full of little craft acrylic paint from when I used to paint little sculptures. And then I've got some watercolor journals sitting on top with various cords and attachments. This is a cell phone holder so I can mount that to the arm up here, and can hold my cell phone when I'm doing live streams, that kind of stuff. Over here I have a set of drawers that holds a lot of the materials that I don't use on a regular basis. This top one, let me see if I can get you guys in here okay. It's hard to record and hold a phone at the same time. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that from watching other videos here on YouTube of studio tours. It's a tricky one. So inside that tub, I've got inks and liquid watercolors. I also have all these little containers of the Colors of Nature watercolors. They come in these little jars, and it's a little bit hard to store them elsewhere because they take up a lot of room. So those are in there. I also have some painter's tape and some little teeny tiny tapes that I use to like mask off mixing charts and things. In the back here, I've got an assortment of watercolor mediums that I pretty much never use, as well as some linseed oil. I did do a video on the ox gall, and also one of these is a granulation medium, and I did a video about that a long time ago on the channel, which I still feel is pretty relevant, and when people ask about it, I'll direct them towards that video. The linseed oil I use, well, would use for these water mixable oils that I have barely touched since I got them a couple years ago, so I want to go ahead and do that pretty soon. I've got some acrylics that I believe I got in college. Pretty positive I got these in college. I don't know how they're not dried out yet. They've done a fantastic job at holding up in their tubes. I just don't paint with acrylic anymore. Underneath that, I've got an assortment of, I don't know, pens, X-Acto knives, water droplets. My lip balm, I was looking for that. That's what happens when you sleep next to your art supplies. Things fall in there. Anyway, on to the next drawer. The next drawer is mostly drawing supplies, as well as some of my old bullet journal supplies ended up in here too. I've got some brush pens here and here. I've got some inks that Jaquelin sent me for a fountain pen. Lots and lots of pencils, color pencils, drawing pencils, watercolor pencils. Did I say that already? Don't know. Old school crayons because I can't give them up. More color pencils, watercolor charcoal, like water-based graphite. These are chalk pastel pencils, and we've got pan pastels in the back, charcoal, pan pastel tools. Lots of things that I should use more often, but never seem to have the time for. This final drawer is just a hodgepodge of stuff. It has a lot of extra palettes. This is the one I was using for my oil paintings. This had ink in it. This was left over from a video I recorded and I didn't want to waste the paint by cleaning it off. I've got an extra metal tin here that I also have plans for, but need to get to it. There's glue, there's adhesive dots, there are magnets, there are clay tools somewhere in here, an extra heat tool. I don't know. This is just kind of like the drunk drawer of my art supplies, so if it needs a home, it ends up there. My phone is starting to die, so I need to make this a little bit quick here, wrapping up the art room portion of this video. Here you might be interested to see some paint making supplies. I've been putting off making paints for a long time because I have really bad shoulder pain, specifically on my right side, so molding isn't something that I think I can keep up with, but my very kind boyfriend gave me a gift when he came back from a trip. He found a little art shop when he was visiting in Europe and brought me back some dry pigments. So I used some of my Jackson's money to pick up some gum arabic, a Molar, a glass palette, and then Davinci while I was visiting them down in Southern California. They gave me a couple things to try as well. So I really look forward to trying that out as soon as I can get to it. I also have two handmade paints here that I would like to get up on the channel sometime soon. You know Otto, that's on the right hand side there. She sent me some of her handmade paints to take a look at, and then Neela Kalori also sent me some that I have been dying to swatch out and to get my hands on, but I wanted to do it on camera for you guys, so I haven't done it yet, and I'm chomping at the bit. On the edge of my desk here, you'll see that I actually have a little hanger for my heat tool that hangs on like a little 3M Scotch tape thingy. And then I also installed a paper towel holder. I did that recently because I was going crazy with my paper towels full of cat hair all the time when they would fall on the floor. So I made that a little bit more accessible. I've got a recycling can, a smaller trash can underneath the desk there, a bin, like a little basket for my dirty cloths, and my really big paper likes to hang out over here. I know some of you are probably still waiting for this. I'm still waiting for this too, but I also have a bunch of vintage watercolor palettes that I got off of eBay ages ago, and I'm dying to make a video about. I think that's going to come around Christmas time. And then the last thing in here is my beautiful art wall from all of my friends that I've met over the years. Some of this artwork is from patrons or viewers. Some of it is from people I have collaborated with, like Arleesha's elf here, and Eve has her little kitty. I've got Leron's collab down here, so a lot of those. And then also just art that I really admire from other artists like Torianne and Jacqueline de Leon, more Arleesha. So I really like this wall. It's a nice inspiration. It's gotten quite big and quite cluttered. I will try and list as many people as possible in the description below if you want to go ahead and find their work a little bit more fully. I know it's hard to name everyone in these videos and to find them, but I will do my best for you. So this is my second workspace. This is where I do all my ordering, editing, processing, all of that fun stuff. It is obviously in a different area than we had been looking at, and also next to the kitchen. So it's a little cramped in apartment life, but I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with that. Got some pictures up on the wall. Those were photographs that I took, and also one from Firefly that I really liked I bought on Etsy. And then I've got my main computers, the one here in the middle, and then I also have my old Mac that I used to use entirely, but it is quite old and has fallen in a little bit of disrepair. I still use it to edit photographs, and I use it in conjunction with my scanner. My scanner is this guy right here, and that way I can process all of my paintings for sale, and then I just transfer them over via Dropbox to my main machine. Some other fun stuff I have on this desk. This is my label printer for when I do orders out of my Etsy shop. It's a lifesaver, and to anyone running their own business or you're shipping things from home, I highly recommend them. They're a bit of an investment, but it has saved me so much trouble. This is just an external speaker for my computer. It's not super awesome in terms of logistics because the cords come out on one side of it, so I can't center it in my desk, and I don't know, it just is what it is. Hiding back over here is my Yeti microphone and pop filter. And if you guys want to find any of this equipment, I do have a special tab on my Amazon shop that I have all of my equipment in versus art supplies, so you can go ahead and check that out. I'll put a link in the description below. The other thing I really wanted to show you in my setup was actually this light that sits over the top of my main monitor. This is a product that was sent to me by a company, but I almost didn't accept it. I get offers to review things that are completely unrelated to watercolor, and I turn all of them down except this one I actually thought about a little bit because if you can tell when I back up here, I don't know if you can really tell, but this corner of the house is really, really dark. And even with the little extra light on and the living room light on, when I'm working editing videos late at night, my eyes get really easily fatigued between the brightness of the monitor and the surrounding area. So I use this light literally every single day. Every single day that I'm sitting at my computer, I turn it on. I absolutely adore it, and I wanted to share it with you guys. I know it's not a watercolor product. I'm not sponsored by this company, but they did send it to me, and I wanted to show it to you guys because it's so cool. So here's how it works. There's a little dial down here, and when you press the dial, let me pull back far enough, the light turns on. Whoop, my dirty monitor. Oof. Let's go ahead and just clean that off. Dust it off a little bit. Okay, I think we've settled down a little bit. Anyway, so there's this dial here, and you can set two different settings on this. You can set the overall brightness, which will lower the brightness or raise it depending on how much light you want in your workspace. And you can also adjust the temperature by toggling this little button here, and so you can make it a really warm light, or you can make it a really cool light, so you can adjust it for if it's late at night and you don't want that blue light interfering with anything. It also has an auto adjust feature where if I press this button, it'll assess the lighting situation and pick something that it thinks is appropriate. So like I said, I wasn't initially going to accept that, but I know a lot of people who follow the channel are creators themselves. Some of you are digital artists. I know a lot of you are content creators yourselves, so I wanted to go ahead and share this with you guys because I think it's a really, really cool product. And again, I use it every single day, and I'm just really, really grateful for the opportunity to be introduced to that. I've never seen anything like it before. Coming away from the main computer area, I've got my paper printer here. This is just a black and white laser printer. It doesn't do anything special. It's not color print or anything like that. I've got a trash can nearby. The box down here is refills for the label printer. And then most of the other stuff is on the other side of this chair. So I spill a little bit out into the living room surroundings, but this is where most of the packaging and everything happens. Let me go ahead and get comfy here. I already showed you my scanner, and I use that to make sure the paintings come in nice and crisply. Then we've got some thank you cards. This is a corner rounder, which is pretty cool. So you can round the corners of things. I do this with my postcards. Then I've got some like do not bend labels, calculator with a Hufflepuff sticker. My 5x7 prints are over here. My 8x10 prints are stored in this box. The ones in front here need to be sorted and stacked in, but I used to organize them like that for when I went to conventions and needed to find things quickly. Not as much of a problem now that I am just working from home. Got a little collection of washi tape going up here and my business cards. Then over here we have all the packing supplies. So I've got bubble mailers that my pouches go out in. These are just regular envelopes. Got some spare postcards that I use to back stickers sometimes. Hiding behind this pile are a bunch of 5x7 mailers. We've got the 8x10 mailers, 9x12 mailers. And then down here is kind of like my junk drawer. This is kind of like my extra buttons that I had left over from conventions, extra business cards, things that are like seconds or that I wouldn't sell, but sometimes include in orders sometimes. And this box is probably what I use most often. I've got the bags that I place my orders in, backing boards, cellophane, plastic, paper, whatever this is called, to package the products in. I have tried to research eco-friendly options for the plastic protective pouches, but all of the options, they're both expensive and not archival or appropriate for watercolor paintings or prints. So I've unfortunately had to stay with the plastic ones, but it is something I've definitely considered. And then everything from here over this direction are all my original paintings. So I'm pretty bad about listing these all online, but if you're ever interested in an original painting of mine, you're always welcome to email me, see if I still have it on hand. Let me know in the comments below if it's something that you'd like to see in my shop more often. If it is, then I can go ahead and go through the trouble of listing those if they want to find good homes, because I realized the other day it's gotten quite ridiculous on how many that I have just sitting there waiting to be rehomed. I've got my paper cutter here that I use to trim down prints, and then over in this direction is the corner that we don't talk about very much. It's kind of back in the corner underneath my desk. It has bubble wrap and USPS priority mailers and things like that, and some extra prints that I use for the mystery bags. And the last thing that I wanted to show off on here is that this desk itself is a sit-stand desk. So I knew that when I left my main job and knew I'd be working from home, I knew it was going to be important to have a desk that would be appropriate for my back pain. So this big black mat underneath the desk is a standing mat so that I can actually pull this out onto the floor and stand at my computer and use these controllers here to lift the desk up. So this raises all the way up. So this does lift all the way up, so you can go ahead and stand at it so that I can just be here working at height, and I can switch back and forth between sitting and standing, whichever my back is feeling that day. So I hope that you guys enjoyed seeing where I work and just kind of the space that I live in, even though it's a cramped little apartment. I just try and make my business work for me. Let me know what your workspace is like in the comments below. I'd love to hear more about it. If you do live in a tight space, what do you do to make things work? Anything clever, anything that you'd like to share? And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cricket, would you like to be in the video? No? Not feeling it today? You know, you do this every time. You interrupt me, you make lots of noise, and then when I ask you if you want to be in the video, you're like, no. Here's my back. All right. We'll see you later.